Hello and welcome to the Pompey Politics Podcast, the podcast where we discuss matters of international, national, and local importance in the political world in a calm, measured, sensible, and reasonable way. I'm Ian Tiny Morris.
And I'll be sensible and reasonable too. And I'm Simon Sansbury. Evening, him.
We are nearly there. It's got a little end of term feel. Did you bring in hungry hippos or some such? It's our last show before we take the summer off.
Yeah, indeed. We'll do this one, and then we'll bow for the summer season and come back at some point in the autumn. Maybe some stuff will happen in the meantime that'll give us something to talk about. Maybe when we come back, we can have a conversation about 16-year-olds getting the ballot or other things that have probably wound you up.
No. I always think it's good to raise these things early, but our focus this evening is on local matters, as Tuesday was first full council for a couple of months, and we always know when the agenda comes out, we have a quick skim through it and make our decision as to whether it's pantomime season come early or whether there's
Oh, no, it isn't.
or whether there's going to be some stuff for us to get our teeth into. But it was a packed agenda, so I guess we ought to be cracking on.
Yeah, indeed. Well, there was quite a lot on the agenda for today. For Tuesday, but there were also quite a few public deputations. So we're going to try and go through the agenda in chronological order, or in the order that's on the order sheet. So and if anybody wants to follow along with the agenda items, then by all means do. You can follow that from the link that I'm just putting into the chat now. But while I'm saying that, please do remember to click us a like, a follow, give us a comment, share in the communication and the conversation, and give us a subscribe on YouTube. So now I've done the selling for the purposes of social media and engagement and such like. Like you say, packed agenda. But plenty of things to talk through. So I think kind of the first thing that was a main kind of thing to talk about was the deputations from the public, which is item number 5. So as I say, we had quite a few. We had Viola Langley, who was speaking about the notice of motion that was about accelerating our approach to the climate crisis, and she was talking about criticising the lack of leadership from national government and calling on councillors to act boldly.
If you didn't see the episode, then it's there for you to look at. Where Viola, a friend of the pod, was will give you the full inside scoop on everything there, I think.
Yes. So talking about speaking to the public honestly in light of overwhelming scientific evidence. Mr. Leach, who also spoke on the same subject, talked about the council failing to act and calling for immediate, collective and bold action. Dr. Waring was talking about Southern Water, which was 12G, if memory serves. So that's the last notice of motion, and he was condemning Southern Water for their what he called their unjustifiable and excessive bill increases.
Interesting one on that one today. The Minister for the Environment was on Koonsberg this morning, basically highlighting that they're going to look at the regulator, they're going to ban bonuses, and then Laura, in her warm and witty style, unlike ours, threw him the curveball of, so what do you think about the CEO of Southern Water almost doubling his salary, which I think had him rather on the back foot. So yes, Southern Water, it appears our local member of public was ahead of the curve on the government on that one.
Yes, but they're also It's a bit strange, isn't it? Going on to Sunday politics shows when the announcement that you're there to talk about isn't made until the next day. So all of the questions are going to be, "What's the announcement about?" Wait till tomorrow.
Yes, yeah.
Sit at the bottom of the Christmas tree and ask on Christmas Eve and ask for what's for Christmas. So that talked about a weak regulatory regime. Sophie Biddlecombe talked very passionately about and powerfully about access to disabled accessible play equipment in the play parks across Portsmouth. And although and we'll come on to that, so I won't kind of give us some spoilers, but mentioning around kind of meaningful access and the services. Dimpy Sood talked about the need for stronger enforcement regard to the sales of illicit tobacco and vapes, and how those are affecting other small businesses and the businesses that do actually follow the law, as was Kamal Naruga also speaking on that subject, and how basically it feels that the odds are against the hardworking local retailers. And a name that you may well recognise, Paula Savage was the last public deputation who was also speaking on 12C, the climate action, and urging the City Council to move beyond declarations and make actual action with measurable targets and public engagement, saying that it's not too late, but it is time, and it's time to act. So one thing I didn't mention about Viola is she ended her deputation with a song, which I can't remember someone else doing.
Oh no!
So, it's one way to get noticed in the chamber.
Well, to be fair, Simon, my musical stylings regularly get no support from you on this platform. I even was musing before we ran in about writing Portsmouth Politics the musical, but I don't think I got. So fair play to Viola for breaking that mold, and for those of us who are more musically creative. But I guess our first big issue is local government reorganisation, the gift that keeps on giving, but we're not quite sure what the gift is and whether it's going to give us anything.
Yeah, indeed. There was a lot that Councillor Steve Pitt, the leader of the council, needed to say on this subject. So should we play the clip?
Run VT.
Go.
And I felt it was really important that we did actually ask the people of Portsmouth specifically what they thought about the principles at stake here, because I've been very clear, this council's indeed been pretty clear in its intentions, but it's really important that we understand what the residents think. So 82% of them have turned around and said they don't want to be part of this at all. Recognising that we don't have a lot of choice, 61% said that the proposal to potentially form a new unitary with Fareham Gosport and Havant would be one that they would reluctantly support.
A resounding message to Councillor Gerarda to take back to Jim McMahon is the fact that Portsmouth does not want this. I was quite interested to hear what Councillor Gerarda actually said, because in reality I appreciate she's trying to defend her government's position on this, which is we're going to impose you on it whether you like it or not. But it seems to me that her position of defence seemed to be along the lines of the questions were all wrong in the actual survey that went out, and therefore that justifies the reason to keep ramming this actually through. People don't want this to happen, and I think this sends out a resounding message to Councillor Gerarda to take back to Jim McMahon, is the fact that Portsmouth does not want this. Now, whether she's actually prepared to do that or not remains to be seen, but I suspect not. She will do whatever the Labour Party head office tell her to do.
Government has organised no meaningful consultation on this move. It has offered no local vote. And indeed, there is no real survey of local opinion at all being organised. The Labour government in faraway Westminster have said they will impose this move regardless of what Portsmouth residents want, by legislation or ministerial decree if needed. So much for local democracy.
From the outset, there are real concerns that we have about the research methods and the design of this particular survey. There's clearly going to be people that have answered this survey that don't know how they feel about that particular question, or indeed don't know how they feel about LGR in general. that have been forced to answer yes or no. And given that the council puts out numerous surveys and consultations, probably multiple times a week, it came as a bit of a surprise to see that respondents were being forced to answer yes or no rather than giving them a don't know option. It may say that 3,900 respondents answered this survey, but actually it was possible to answer the survey multiple times, and indeed we do know of people that were able to answer it multiple times. There was no verification element for someone to actually have to put in an email and address and know that that person has actually answered and that they are indeed a Portsmouth resident. With other forms of consultation, there is a verification process where you then find out, is our data reliable? Do we know that these people are residents? Do we know that people have only answered once?
The Liberal Democrats are, and they're perfectly entitled to run a campaign as strongly as they wish against the proposals. But to try and pretend this is some objective survey of opinion is really a bit beyond the pale. I'm pretty sure that the Liberal Democrats were encouraging as many of their supporters and members to fill in the survey. Now, did any of them fill in more than once? I don't know.
We have a minister who gives you an instruction, and because you comply with the instruction that you've been given because you're legally obliged to, thinks that that is some form of assent. I mean, honest to God, if you sat in those meetings with me, I am absolutely sure that any sane person would think that Jim McMahon probably needs to take a very long holiday. There is not another council meeting between today and the extra council meeting we're already having for this submission in September. So if you want us to have more opportunities to feed back the views of our residents to government, we need to do it now. The provisional figure for the gap for this council as part of a new unitary on day one is £33 million. Budget gap on day one of a new local authority. If that's what you want, keep fighting for it, Labour. I felt.
So, strong words. What I had to cut out in the aims of time, there was a bit of theatre with this. Councillor Lee Hunt brought in a great big stack of survey responses and read a selection of them out. So essentially, yes, the Lib Dem administration were presenting the results of a council survey that essentially had a couple of questions in it, which were binary questions about whether people liked the idea of their basically being a local government reorganisation and Portsmouth throwing its lot in with neighbouring councils like Havant, Waterlooville, Fareham and Gosport, and Labour were saying, but you didn't make sure people couldn't fill it in twice and the questions only gave you binary answers, so you didn't have a don't know kind of answer.
Yes. Well, I guess, and we heard there, I think I got most of the people, obviously Charlotte and George for Labour, kind of questioning the methods. Simon Bosher was there from the Conservatives. Obviously, Steve spoke very passionately at the start and the end. There was somebody else in the middle who I think was a Lib Dem whose voice I didn't quite recognise.
There was a Peter Candlish.
Peter Candlish, I should have known it was Peter. But I guess for me, Simon, on this one, I have a little bit of sympathy with both sides. We all know that binary questions where the true depth of what the either outcome is not entirely clear can lead you down a fairly rocky road. But in this case, it was 82-18 to say Portsmouth says no. And you're talking about, verification and people could vote twice. But yeah, people could vote twice for both sides. And if it was something where you don't know, and you're offered yes or no, my guess is, well, you wouldn't fill in the survey. It was entirely optional. So
yeah, no one was there twisting anybody's arm to fill the survey in.
Where's the don't know element? Well, tell you what, close the window and move on. So I guess for me, this is one of those ones, as you say, there's a bit of theatre to it.
Mm-hmm. No, there isn't.
It is a difficult one because party politics comes into play here, doesn't it? Labour have said that this is a brave new dawn, and this is going to integrate the forward-thinking, dynamic spongalisation of the integration of the demarcation of Labour from the central repository. And everyone said, oh, that sounds good. And then somebody said, yeah, I haven't got a clue what any of that means. So I guess none of us know what this means, other than we know that the two neighbouring councils that we are supposed to join up with both have massive fiscal holes, and we don't. So, you know,
Yeah,
I
there's a, there's a lot there. I feel like I should just point out to make sure that everybody understands that we're talking about local government reorganisation.
we are
not devolution, which is the strategic authority, which will be Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, or Hampshire and the Solent, as it's being called, which will have an elected mayor, which will have greater control over multi-year spending plans and things like transport and economic initiatives tool. This is local government reorganisation. This is the thing that is separate but goes alongside it.
We can't have one without the other, can you, Simon? That's
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, so
you can't have the LGR without the devolution.
No, and you can't have and the devolution
Yeah.
without LGR kind of means nothing. So I think for me, you know, oh God, it's a piece of theatre. It's party politics. The interesting thing for me is that obviously our friends from Labour there didn't appear to be taking up the cudgel in a robust no, LGR is fantastic. I think the nature of their defence, which was, well, we don't like the answer you've got because of the mechanism, bit of a distraction. So this one is going to run, and I think when we come back in September, obviously, as Steve alluded to, I think it's decision time in September, and they've got to come up with this is what it means for us. So, yeah, not much more to be said, is there?
Not really on that one. So moving swiftly on, 9 was the modern slavery and human trafficking statement, which passed without any kind of noting. The next one was there was a government and audit standards committee that had done a review on how to decide the opposition group in the Portsmouth City Council if the number of councillors was tied. Regular listeners might remember that a few weeks ago we talked about the problem that arose that since Labour welcomed Councillor Judith Smythe and Councillor Ghosh back into their fold from temporary suspensions, that they then actually carried the same number of councillors as Portsmouth Independence Party did, who were at that time the official opposition, and therefore, how do you decide who it is? So council did what councils do. No, they didn't.
Okay.
They didn't. No, there was no wrestling ring. There was no arm wrestling. But basically, they formed a committee to look at how that was, and they came up with a list of 7 really exciting options, which I'll quickly go through. Option 1 was not to have one, as in an opposition.
Right.
Option 2 was to recognise that all groups are the opposition that are tied. Option 3 was to rotate the title between the tied groups. Option 4 was to group that the title goes to the group with the largest percentage of votes across the city at the last regular election. Now, it doesn't seem to specify whether that means local or general election, but interesting, regular. So, i.e., not a by-election. 5 was whoever won the highest number of seats at the last regular election overall. Number 6 was use the same process when there's a tie actually at an election. So in a local election, if the candidates with the highest number of votes is actually tied to the exact same number, if memory serves, they do a coin toss.
Yeah, flip a coin. Yep.
And then option 7 was have a vote at full council, which the comment is basically should the administration, who would in theory be in a majority, be in a position to decide who their opposition is, because that seems a little bit inside baseball. So essentially, despite those wonderfully thought out and detailed options, Councillor Gerarda moved that they actually basically put this one aside and basically go back to gas and not discuss it, and basically not discuss it at this meeting. Oh. So. But those were interesting options. It's just interesting. We have a difficult thing. One of the options is just to ignore that there's a difficult thing and pretend that they don't exist.
Yeah,
no. I like that.
Yeah, no. I mean, to be fair, they had 2 months to come up with that list. I think we came up with most of that list on the podcast on the fly when we had George on with us. So sending the homework back to try again Well, because ultimately you haven't come up with a decision there. You know, it strikes me, oh, it's madness. Oh, let's move on. That is rich creamery fudge.
So the process for the nomination of honorary aldermen, that had also gone to a committee to basically have a look at, and the committee, having decided that that actually they didn't like the word honorary because they couldn't define it, then decided that they'd actually use a different word, and then also couldn't decide on actually what the definition of that was, and essentially the debate circled around the point of, well, we can't figure out what these things and what certain things should be excluding people from being considered as honorary alderperson. There might be certain things that, you know, some groups might not like that a person's done, or a political choice that someone's like that. And should that really exclude them? Because that sounds like a political thing rather than a reflection of their service to the city. But they did point out, to be fair, why are we having this conversation? Because in a couple of years' time, we'll be a different council, and thereby we'll have to have this conversation all over again. So, yeah. So,
another
another
waste of time.
Come now! This is the cut and thrust of local democracy.
Exactly.
Ian, come on, get with the programme.
Did they have they changed alderman to alderperson?
That did not come up in the conversation.
Yeah, because the trouble is, if you say older person, it sounds like older person. There's going to be confusion there. Right, come on. What's next? Give me something better. Planning.
So into the notice as a motion.
What could
planning
be
process
more exciting than planning? Come on, this is going to spice up the whole podcast. Now, let's go.
So 12A, planning positive progress, put forward by Councillor Swan and Councillor Bosher, so from Team Blue, this one, and essentially talks about governments of all colours failing spectacularly to acknowledge the unique and severely limiting geography of Portsmouth. We're an island, we can't build more homes, and basically calling on the cabinet member for planning policy to write to the housing minister and to ensure that the planning department can commit to openly working with members and the public to be kind of fully transparent. You will be surprised that passed unanimously.
Yeah, and to be fair, we've been slightly flippant with the previous two. It's something which they, I doubt it will fall. It will probably certainly fall on deaf ears, but there is an element of, if you're surrounded by sea on three sides, you can't go left, right, or down because you will fall into the water. So, no, fair point on that one.
Yeah, indeed. And there's also another point in the agenda that is also about a planning thing. So we'll talk to that later. But because it's different enough and talks about a different specific planning thing, it didn't fall foul of the, hang on, you can't talk about the same thing at a council meeting within 6 months. So it didn't fall foul of that standing order. However, at the end of this debate, the Lord Mayor, who remember is at the moment is Gerald Vernon Jackson, who essentially chairs the meeting of the full council, and is the Lord Mayor is an apolitical role, made this contribution at the end of it, which I thought was worth clipping. So I'll play that quickly.
Councillor, just an observation from me. It seems to me that the parties in Westminster all have one view across all political parties, that they want to push more housing, and locally we all know across parties that it's stupid. So it's not a party political thing, it's a difference between national and local government where there is a very different view.
And I think a very fair observation, which is very easy to put housing targets on a spreadsheet in Westminster and then send them down. And as somebody stood there with the numbers on a spreadsheet in Portsmouth, scratching their head, looking at the already full city, I think a fair apolitical contribution there from Gerald.
As insightful as normal from Gerald. So that was a good one to see. So next up on our list was discussing the air quality, and that was brought forward by councillors Winnington and Candlish. So this was from Team Lib Dem, and essentially talking about the UK national limits for nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter are set 4 times the level of those by the World Health Organization. Talks about the health impacts of air pollution, which again, listeners and viewers can go back and watch or listen to the week before last's episode about the clean air in the city. Talking about how December 2024, the report found that only 3 of the monitors of nearly 250 in the city found record levels of air pollution. So the clip that we played that time was where Peter Candlish, the cabinet member for traffic and transportation, felt that really the clean air zone wasn't the contributor to the reduction. It was actually just people kind of replacing their vehicles. Basically calling on writing to the government and asking for further assistance tackling air quality measures, support for things like scrappage schemes, which the council had previously asked for and didn't really get anywhere with from the government. Don't have clips for this one.
No. And
will I surprise you to say that it passed?
Yeah, no, and it's another one of it kind of sort of makes sense, but it's a bit shouting into the void, isn't it? It's a little bit of we've done some good stuff. It's got better. We've done as much as we can. Look, national government, you need to do more, which no one's going to disagree with because it effectively makes it somebody else's problem. So we are now on the old climate emergency, which again, again, important topic. Again, I don't want to belittle it, but the shouting of emergency seems to have been going on for a good couple of years now. So should we run VT and see what those in the know had to say about it?
We've produced multiple strategies and action plans available on your website. And these documents, though well-intentioned and indicative of some good progress in some areas, lack a clear commitment to driving and manage rapid change. They don't sufficiently outline stakeholder engagement, public participation, or a robust understanding of the city's current carbon footprint. Furthermore, they fall short in setting out when and where major emissions reductions will be achieved. You're doing some really great and exciting things, especially under Councillor Kimberly Barrett's leadership of that portfolio. I'm impressed. I boast about what Portsmouth's doing, but you don't need to just go on listing everything because I still don't understand what the collective impact of all those decisions are on reducing the carbon footprint.
Now, the motion asks this service, the housing service, to commit to replacing all gas boilers with renewable ones immediately. That is tonight. That's 6.5 hours. Replacing 14,000 or so gas boilers in 6.5 hours is, let's be honest, a bit tough. However, I agree with the sentiment. Earlier this year, that government scrapped the Tory plan to ban all residential gas boilers by 2035. No new date, no commitment to replace them with green alternatives. Again, a difference between what Portsmouth Labour has been putting forwards and what the Labour government has been putting forwards. I only hope we've got a minister who's a Portsmouth MP to actually try and lobby us to change that. Now, this year's housing budget has already been agreed, and I have to say, I didn't hear a peep about climate change. And as Labour has put forward this commitment, its government can fund it.
And I have sat in meetings before where there'll be discussions about what options to choose, whether or not an existing property should be demolished and replaced with a new building. And it may be that obviously the new building is much more eco-friendly, that it's to passive house standards, that, it's going to save a lot of carbon emissions in the future. But I always ask the question, has there been any thought about the embodied carbon in demolishing that building? Has there been a carbon audit of the decision to demolish the building? And the answer would always be no, I wouldn't have that kind of analysis. And that is the sort of analysis that we are looking for, as well as that sort of carbon auditing and that baseline and that understanding, and that we come back to see how we're performing. You can't manage what you can't measure. And until we have that kind of audit in place and those kind of stats and figures, we then can't, see the impact of all of the amazing projects that are happening and all the great work that's being done. We can't know what the impact of that is until we have those figures.
It just gets me Every single time we come to this council meeting, this group of councillors over here, the Labour Party, keep telling us we must do more. We must go harder, we must go stronger on all these sorts of issues. And yet their government is going the other way. You know, and this is what we're faced with. We're being asked by them to do more all of the time. It wasn't in their budget. It wasn't in their budget this year. And it probably won't be in their budget next year. But they're going to come here and tell us we should do much more than we're doing right now, when their own party is doing less and less and less on these sorts of issues.
I think my suggestion, Councillor Sanders, was that when we needed to replace a boiler, we put back an electric one, which would spread out that money considerably. I just feel sad, actually. We're scrapping around political concepts when the world is burning. And I'm personally scared stiff about the future of the planet, and for the rest of my life will do what I can do to support carbon reduction. And all I offered you was a well-tried and tested model for treating something as an emergency rather than lots of projects that are not joined up. I didn't offer you any more than that. I am willing to accept your amendments, although it does water down what I'm saying. It's better to have agreement of that than go on scrapping about this. This is the most important thing on our public agenda across the world that we could ever have.
So, what if you can take your head out of your hands? So.
No, my head is in my hands.
So,
you carry on for now, and I will
okay,
emerge from my head in hands position.
I'll let you take a beat. So, so the Lib Dems, in case you didn't, in case that wasn't clear from the closing part of Councillor Judy Smythe's summing up speech, the Lib Dems made an amendment which she agreed to subsume. The Lib Dem amendment essentially listed all of a lot of the things that the council has been doing and is doing, and how well it's doing, and the awards that it has won with regards to its approach to. Its approach to climate change and all of the sorts of things, and I won't list them here because, to be honest with you, that would take the rest of the show. Essentially, kind of that was kind of where that went. But the tension, as you can hear there, is between the administration were saying, well, hang on, there's a disparity between what central government are doing and what central government are funding, and what actually the local Labour Party are calling on more ambition for these things and more action on these things. But to a wider point, I mean, Charlotte Gerarda was one of the things that she said there was about what, essentially, was paraphrasing her, was what gets what gets measured gets managed. So if fundamentally, if you boil away all of the politics of that, if you've got trackable KPIs, then surely that's the right thing to be able to demonstrate whether the actions you're taking are actually having an effect. I think is kind of essentially the cut and thrust of their point.
Yeah, but this is the problem, though, isn't it? This is the fundamental issue: is that planet, nation, city, locale. The actions that you take in a hyper-local way might affect your hyper-locality. It might affect your city. But does it then scale up to make a material difference? And I find that the whole motion disingenuous. If I look at the one issue they called out there, oh, shouldn't we be replacing gas boilers with effectively heat pumps in the council-owned properties? So I was faced with replacing my boiler this year, and it was £2,500 to replace the gas boiler, or £15,000 to install a heat pump. I could have been very noble and installed the heat pump. I didn't have £15,000 to install a heat pump. And Portsmouth City Council, I'll replace it when it breaks down with a heat pump. So every time one breaks down, you are going for something that is 6 times the cost.
And I think to be honest with you, those are the sorts of points that the administration were making, and indeed the motion's calling for kind of more support and direction from central government. And just to kind of point out, there was the point there that there seemed to be the disagreement about whether immediate was the key word.
Yep.
But it did actually say, I'm trying to find the bit now.
But I guess whether it's immediate or whether it's over the next 10 years.
Yeah, but immediate doesn't mean you wait for it to break down, does it? That's
No,
the kind of thing. So, I know it sounds like a really, really minute and possibly terribly pedantic kind of point. That I think was the point that Councillor Sanders was making.
Yes.
I think I clipped out of what he'd said there, was that essentially the cost of doing that across all of the properties that the council is responsible for is about twice the housing budget.
Yeah. And I think this is the piece which, and it's why I have my head in my hands, Simon, because there is debate around the pace of change and whether the pace of change can be achieved. We want to move fully to electric cars. Well, how do you charge your electric cars if you're in a flat-fronted house in Copner? Oh, well, you can now drill a gully in the pavement. Brilliant. There's the local substation. Can it take all the houses in Copner having electric chargers? No, it can't. Oh, right. Okay. Or we should be putting in heat pumps. These are all great ideas. And for me, I thought when Judith came back and said, oh, we're scrapping about this and we're politicking, there is no money to replace all of the gas boilers in council properties with heat pumps. So by asking for it, it's, I was going to say a very bad word there, it's a gotcha fork, because it's that, well, we asked them to address the climate emergency and, they tittle-tattled it away with price taggery. I just, and as was called out, if you thought it was that important, put it in your budget, be transparent about however many million you want to spend on replacing gas boilers with heat pumps, and also show, because the people of Portsmouth, if they want to make a decision on this, it shouldn't be on noble grandstanding. If you want to spend X million on heat pumps in Portsmouth, what difference will that make to the residents of Portsmouth? And if I may use the old analogy, it'll be a we in the sea. So yeah, that one's got me quite cross.
Okay, well, let's move on in the interest of time. So 12D brought forward a cross-party motion from Charlotte Gerarda from Labour and Councillor Hannah Brent from the Conservatives. This was the one about increasing disability accessible equipment in Portsmouth play parks. And I think the fundamental difference they're talking about is the equipment itself may well be disability accessible, but if you're in a wheelchair, getting across the play park to that equipment is the problem, and actually getting to the play park is the problem. But I'll play this clip.
Really unacceptable that family like Sophie's are having to travel out of Portsmouth for over half an hour to access accessible play parks. So I really can't imagine the anguish that Sophie and other parents have had to endure, knowing that their children are unable to play with other children in the same way as able-bodied children. We understand that sources are scarce. We understand that it's costly to replace the wood chip. And we understand that the wood chip is put in for laudable safety reasons. But if we want to take pride in being an inclusive city, we have to do more for disabled children, especially if other areas literally next door to us are getting it right. We understand that obviously accessible equipment is expensive too. But what we're asking for with this motion is a long-term plan to make at least some of our play parks accessible to disabled children. That the council changes its approach to better consult and make parks more accessible from the outset. So this would actually be a more cost-effective approach, because it would ensure that the equipment that's being expected to last decades will actually serve the widest range of children.
If there is an accessible swing, you have to get across wood chip, potentially in a wheelchair, for someone that is a wheelchair user, to go in that swing. And thankfully, Sophie, when I did say that we were changing some play equipment in Drayton Park last year and also at the Wrekin off Arlington Avenue, she contacted me and highlighted that Drayton actually wasn't wheelchair accessible, which is why I have had communications, because if you're going there, the parking is very limited, and if you are using a wheelchair, somewhere like Drayton Park is better to have a car park on site, and there is concrete paths going all the way round. You've got 800 metres squared wood chip. For us to change that will cost £56,000. So then there will be mulch, which is wheelchair accessible. So any wheelchair user will be able to go on the mulch all across the park in Drayton, apart and obviously on the grass areas as well. What can we do to change it?
So we've got a tension between the last big pot of national government funding to deliver significant change, I would say societal change, and what's happened with local government funding since then. Because Portsmouth, remember, has had to take over £110 million a year out of its annual budget during that 15-year period. So the most important thing in all of this is where are we going from here? But the significant piece of information is that Play England wrote this open letter that Councillor Hunt referred to the Starmer government last year, urging them to address the legislative gap in England to produce a new play strategy, and Play England describes the problem as a decline in children's freedom and opportunities to play since the 1990s. They urge the government to urgently address the decline in children's play. So we need more national funding. Portsmouth has 124 play sites, and we are roughly 40 square kilometres. If you add up all of the play sites in Fareham, Havant and Gosport together, there are only 114, and that covers 157 square kilometres. So it's 4 times as much land with less play parks across the entire area. So for us to maintain 124 play sites to the standard that we do is quite remarkable.
One of the main sort of mottos of the disability movement is nothing about us without us. It's really, really clear, and it's so important for all of us to accept and take that on board, take the feedback on board. You have to consult, you have to take local families with you. They've told us about the gap in the provision. Let's be a bit humble and listen to them and do the best that we can with the limited resources that we have.
So there we are talking about the local implications of national funding decisions that are actually having an impact on things that the council can directly control.
Yep. And I think, Simon, it's a really tricky one, because there is that piece of, building in accessibility from the start is the best way. And, it is that challenge where, the council has done some great work on putting in accessible play equipment. Obviously, the massive frustration is that if you are a wheelchair user and the accessible equipment is in an inaccessible location, you can't get to it by wheeling across wood chip, then there is an element of that's really rubbing salt in the wounds. This is another one, I think, where if we look at it objectively, yes, that there is more that can be done, but I think it is the piece where, these are the items which 15 years ago there would have been discretionary spend to address these issues, and I think the message there was quite clear that whilst there might be some local adjustments that can be done, if you want a seismic, organised and integrated change, that money's got to come from central government.
Yeah, I think there's kind of the major thing is kind of the funding thing. And Paula Savage, thank you very much for commenting there, saying that she joined late. Thank you for joining. Lovely to have you back. Saying about making a pass. So there's more than kind of the big kind of thing of redeveloping the play parks, isn't there? But I think listening to what was being said, the overarching thing is it seems that the consideration of actually is the surface suitable for wheelchair users, as sadly appears to have been overlooked in regards to, we've got the equipment that's there, that's right, but we haven't thought about the journey from home to play park, or the journey from car to play park, or haven't considered that in enough differences of need. And I think that's the thing.
And it happens quite often. I in fact, I sit and we'll be meeting on the Portsmouth Disability Advisory Group this week, and my wheelchair using friends, you know, there've been a couple of times when things have been put in that have been, you know, people have thought about accessibility and they've done 60% of the job or 70-80% of the job, but they've forgotten that last bit that makes something truly accessible. So it kind of is understandable. It is frustrating, but again, if we look at what Hannah said there, you know, to quote unquote fix Drayton Park would be £56,000, and as I think Steve said, there's 124 play sites in the city. You know, 124 times 50, and I know that's not an exact sum, but you are up then around the £6-7 million to fix them all. So yeah, it is a challenge, but I'm glad they're highlighting the issue.
Yeah. Listen and learn as another comment is saying. So sorry, moving swiftly on. So 12E was lawful development certificates, and I'm going to play a quick clip from this was from Russell Simpson and George Madgwick, so it was a PIP motion, but I'm going to play a quick clip from Russell, because that makes the point, to be honest with you, quicker than I'm going to.
There has recently been a few examples of controversial certificate of lawful development for existing use as a HMO applications. These applications are not only against our planning standards and SPDs in place by our Article 4 direction rights, but are being bypassed as a convenient loophole by some landlords to use when they don't achieve permission or haven't sought permission sooner. I will give the Chamber a few examples that have come to Planning Committee recently. Firstly, number 1, Sheffield Road, an HMO that predates our 2011 Article 4 direction, however, leaves our standards and SPDs in a dilemma. While it's completely reasonable for the current landlord to retain its use as is, a HMO, they sought a lawful development certificate so that the new owner can adopt the privilege of its previous owner, therefore can bypass all our standards and SPDs. I'm also sure if the owner did not have this certificate, they would be forced to sell the property at a loss because its known property surrounded by HMOs lower the value. This property is not only one of 5 in a row, but the spacing standards are under our current standards, and the communal space being a mere 10.75 square metre, over 50% under our requirements. Once the owner sells on the property, the house should not be allowed to continue as a HMO, as we well know it would not have permission without the certificate.
So yeah, quick one there from Russell Simpson.
War on HMOs. I think, you know, for me, there is that moral dilemma. You know, is it a good thing for people to live, or are you people farming? You know, what he's described there, 5 in a row, definitely breaks the rules. And it does seem to me that, you know, if you haven't got a certificate now, well, can I have one retrospectively for one that doesn't meet the standards? No, it seems to be the right answer.
Yeah, indeed. One of the other things that he did mention during the summing up of his speech, there was a little bit of a yes minister moment with the summing up. So there were 2 amendments on this one. One came from Councillor Tyndall and one came from the Lib Dems. And after earlier advice that said that they both amendments couldn't be subsumed, it was also pointed out that the person that the motion actually called on the council to write to didn't exist, even though that was the person that Russell had been advised to change it to shortly before making the submission by the planning office. So in the end, the decision was that yes, both actually amendments that tightened up the motion and kind of corrected the language of it could be subsumed. And therefore kind of moved forward a bit. But he also mentioned in his closing up speech a consultation that the government is running that closes on the 23rd, which I am just going to pop into the chat quickly so that everyone can see that. So if they are
another double-edged
against the
sword,
tide.
isn't it? Yeah. Which is that,
Yeah.
you know, and for me, you can loosen in some areas and tighten in others, and still
Yeah.
do a decent job. Which brings us on to tightening the arrangements around illegal vapes. So we've got another clip on this one.
Yes, we have. Let's have that one.
It's about protecting our children, safeguarding public health, and ensuring fair trade for our struggling local businesses. Anwar, who runs the spa on Derby Road in North End, estimated that a hit of roughly 25% in his weekly sales of tobacco products owing to the number of illicit traders in North End. He also said that often products are being sold for around £4, which have an RRP of around £16, meaning his business is being undercut by products sold for a third of the price. The Federation of Independent Retailers did a recent survey of their retailers and found that around 87% of those responding thought their local trading standards had not done enough to address the trade of illegal tobacco products. It's worth also emphasising that illegal trade has direct links to crime escalation in the city. Earnings from the illicit trade of tobacco and vapes fund organised crime, violent incidents and money laundering, particularly in the most disadvantaged areas of our communities. So what can we do next in Portsmouth? Sustain and expand existing targeted enforcement by the Council's trading standards, including the continued test purchases, shop inspections and covert operations, especially in hotspots where pop-up shops have appeared in Fratton, North End and Southsea. Educate and engage through the Council's communications with parents, schools and young people about the dangers of unregulated products, highlighting chemical risks and marketing tactics. Offer clear reporting channels in order to maintain public trust through anonymous reporting via email, online portals or phone calls. Collaborate across the councils and agencies, coordinating with trading standards, HMRC, the police and local health teams to disrupt supply chains and illegal importation. The challenge of illegal tobacco and vapes in Portsmouth isn't just about the products, it's about protecting our children, safeguarding public health and ensuring...
This motion offers a clear and proactive path forward, stronger enforcement, better public awareness, improved collaboration with schools and health services, and a firm commitment to support legitimate traders. It's about protecting our traders, it's about protecting our residents, especially the young and vulnerable. It's about taking a stand against organised crime, and it's about safeguarding the integrity of our local economy. I urge my fellow councillors to back this motion and send a strong message that Portsmouth will not be a safe haven for rogue traders or illegal products.
That ministers have such a high opinion for what Portsmouth trading standards do that they have awarded Portsmouth, yes, Portsmouth, the contract to collate all the intelligence to support the national trading standards, HMRC, police, border force and so on around this criminal behaviour. In summary, Lord Mayor, I need to address the mistake that I have made, and I'm very sorry in this, and it is entirely my fault in our notice of motion. I have mistakenly put that we're funding an additional trading standards officer. I apologise about that. It's not correct. We've funded 2.
It's about protecting...
Councillor Hunt, as ever. So it wasn't 1, it was 2. So yeah, it's a thing, but and it seems that the trading standards are doing a lot, are actually getting recognition for doing that.
Yep.
But fundamentally, beyond that, there's a bigger kind of policing thing, isn't there? I guess, but which isn't in the council's thing.
I guess I'm baffled by this one a little bit. So, is the selling of marijuana still illegal?
As far as I know,
yes.
Yes, I don't know, but I don't. I mean, this was talking about illegal vapes and tobacco.
But I guess my point is, anyone who walks around the streets of Portsmouth will smell marijuana in the air.
Yes.
And it's entirely illegal. So there is a supply chain and a distribution network.
Well, it's not illegal to possess.
No, but
with small amounts and to consume small amounts.
Yes.
It's I understand it. I don't know.
I guess
please, someone correct us in the comments.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But the point I'm making is that you've got to trade in illegal vapes, and vapes are, they contain nicotine, which is addictive. And I don't know how addictive they are compared to cigarettes, but if somebody is addicted, they are going to they're going to satisfy their addiction one way or another. And I just struggle at the whole concept of this in terms of, well, it is illegal to sell illegal tobacco products and vapes. So you're either got to deal with the illegality in a controlled and sustained way. But I make the marijuana comparison because I'd argue that that's already illegal, and Portsmouth as a whole has not got that one under wraps. So why they think that they'll be able to deal with this? For me, this feels very much like gesture politics.
I think there's a grey. I think there's a certain crossover between the trading standards element of licensed operators selling unlicensed products.
Yep.
Not illegal, but unlicensed. Well, they are illegal, but you know what I mean.
Yep.
Versus basically what is quite clearly even if domestic individual use isn't necessarily criminalised, or at least not prosecuted, even if it's not decriminalised, the supply they're getting it from somewhere. But I think probably mixing the two is necessary more of a confusion. I just realised I didn't quickly, very very rapidly, if I could, I didn't kind of say what the outcomes of the last couple were. So the disability accessible equipment, the Lib Dem amendment fell. It wasn't subsumed, and it was voted down by the council. But the motion overall passed unanimously. And the lawful development certificates, the amendments, as I said before, were subsumed from the PIPs and from the Lib Dems by the Lib Dems raising the motion, and that passed unanimously. And the tobacco, there was an amendment from Lee Hunt and Matthew Winnington, so a Lib Dem amendment that was also subsumed. Again, that kind of mostly kind of pointed out the things that the local trading standards officers are actually doing, and then that passed again unanimously. So not a mass, despite the disagreements in the debates, there wasn't a kind of a massive amount of difference in actually how kind of people were voting for things. The last notice of motion was about Southern Water, which essentially, I'm going to paraphrase, is aren't Southern Water shit, and how dare they put up the prices by so much at the same time as not guaranteeing to reduce pollution? Can you do something about that, please?
Yeah.
And there was an amendment from the Labour group which was subsumed, and of course that was that passed also.
Yeah, no, and again, I think if we look at it as a whole, fair amount of posturing, a little bit of theatre, several motions which are we call upon somebody else to do something because we can't. A tricky one, isn't it? Because so many of them come back to money. And they either come back to budgetary conversations that take place at a different part of the year, and obviously now we've got the LGR thing kind of looming over us to kind of forward planning, and you can't commit to a 5-year plan when you don't know which body is going to be voting to continue that or not. We've had kind of several comments, so I was just going to quickly race through those. Let's obviously we've raged. Let's see what everybody else has got to say.
So Tim was saying regarding LGR and the Greater Portsmouth Unitary Authority, that was in a proposal from Deloitte into 2016, so shouldn't be a shock. It's also very much relates to a cohesive transport policy and housing policy across a much larger area, namely the actual greater urban conurbation for the city of Portsmouth, so it gets away from the island bounded by water on 3 sides thing.
Yeah, but sorry, Tim, but that's a bloody nonsense. Wellbourne isn't in Portsmouth. It's at the back of Fareham, and it's been a thing for since Adam was a small boy. So whether it makes
yeah,
any,
but well, I mean, but they're not saying those places will be Portsmouth. They'll be part of a unitary. That the proposal is that, or the suggested proposal is that they'll be part of a unitary authority, including that. It doesn't make them Portsmouth. I mean, there are still people in Portsmouth that don't agree that you and I, who both live in Cosham, are in Portsmouth.
True.
The next one was from Kimberley, saying that providing some detail there. It was 230 million plus is the estimated cost to replace all the boilers in council housing currently. Paula Savage was talking about the climate motion, saying it was a great motion. She said that it wasn't, the intention wasn't to have them kind of all done at once. Although when you kind of look at it, unfortunately, the wording says immediately. So maybe there was something that could have been picked up in an amendment.
If I put those two together, though, Simon, even if it's over the next 10 years, and a boiler's only got a 10 to 10 year life. Well, that's £23 million a year to turn the.
Which I guess is why some of the amendment was talking about seeking for government support for scrappage schemes and things like that, which have been quite successful in other areas of the economy. But you're quite right. The cost difference for the consumer, or indeed for councils that are responsible for doing that, that's a lot of money to find. Tim made a response to Kimberley's comment was about, that's an extra £2,500 for every Portsmouth household to pay on their council tax. And what about private homeowners who will also have to stump up 17,000 for their own heat pump as well? And of course, circa 35k for their new EV. Or you could just not have a car, mate.
Stop
you could stop.
Did
I mention I've ordered an electric bike. I'm picking that up on Wednesday.
This is marvellous. And
yeah.
And no.
Sorry, just a couple more. Sorry.
Yeah, keep going.
Paula's quick one there was the point that we raised about about listening to what the people were saying about their needs, so we can listen and learn with regard to the disabled access to play equipment. Councillor Russell Simpson also pointed out that it was a very long full council and residents still have time to fill in that survey. So please do go fill in that survey. The council was just a smidge under 6 hours. So to be fair, not record breaking, but better. And I didn't mention that in the middle of one of the debates, sadly, a member of the public in the gallery collapsed. So they kind of stopped proceedings at that point, and we understood that she was okay. Councillor Tom Coles went up to see that she was okay, and the staff from the Guildhall looked after her. So we wish her well. And at one point, I think by the sound of it, because they'd opened a window because it was too hot, and then a bird tried to fly in. So it was all go. And the last one was Tim saying that Councillor Oliver made a very valid point about the fact that sand and wood chip, so this is talking about the disability access at play parks, is unhygienic, and why has it been in the PCC design spec for so long, bearing the issues, and modern rubberized surfaces have been around ages and are water permeable, hygienic and accessible for wheelchairs. Surely some of the PCC officers need to just apply a bit more common sense over use of materials and what is available, rather than blundering on with a 1950s wood chip and sand pit approach.
Yeah, and all kind of great points, and the answer is almost certainly that one is cheaper than the other. So, as with many things in our political world, it all comes down to money. So, at the end of that spectacular theatre of the Portsmouth Full Council meeting, it's time for us to sign off for the summer, to wax our boards and go and shoot the tube, to use the surfing vernacular. So you've been listening to the
cycle on your electric bike.
On your electric bike, you will be flying about. So you've been listening to the Pompey Politics Podcast. I've been Ian Tiny Morris.
And I've been Simon Sansbury. And as Ian said, please do stay tuned. You can subscribe to us on YouTube, comment or follow us on Facebook. Remember, Facebook only keeps our live stream videos now for a month, so the best place to do that is on YouTube. But leave a comment or follow if you're listening to us as the pod. But I've been Simon Sansbury. You can even go to our website, pppodcast.uk, and sign up for our regular newsletter, so you can keep posted as to what's going on. But thank you very much for all of those great comments. We managed to squeeze a nearly 6 hour meeting into just over an hour, so that's not too bad. We'll see you after the summer. Have a great summer, everyone, and please do remember your sunblock. Don't forget to like, follow and comment on Facebook, or comment and subscribe on YouTube. Find us on all the social media platforms: Facebook, X, YouTube, Threads, LinkedIn.